We have seen many regions of the world and different places. Now we're going to analyze how you see the development of Chinese initiatives in this new international context like BRICS, Reset, and all these process economic blocks for China has been formed. And for this, we have a great friend, an ally from China today, who will introduce our speaker, and we hope that the original speaker recovers. So please, Judith, can you introduce our speaker? Well, you have already said that. Our speaker is in representation of Sylvia Lin, who unfortunately had a health issue and she had to go to emergencies. And now we have Miss Gabriela Cedillo. She's director of China Today. So I ask you to welcome her and we give the floor to Gabi. We can hear you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. And I sent greetings from Sylvia Lin. She had a medical problem. But thank you very much for giving us this space. Well, to start with what BRICS means. It's Brazil, Russia, India, China, a new era of cooperation for BRICS has been held, a meeting in this time where Xi Jinping said that China is willing to work with all the countries, including the BRICS, to promote common development all over the world. And the fragile economic recovery, the gap of development, and challenges like climate change and digital governance. Well, they had this meeting because of all this. Nowadays, the BRIC countries should be faithful to its original principles, working with other countries to face challenges and open future for the Agenda 2030 of the United Nations. In this meeting, they are also talking about the implementation of initiatives for global development. In June, we had the 14th summit of BRICS. Xi Jinping had a speech for high quality and new cooperation for BRICS. The statement has 8 sections, 75 elements, 10,000 words, and for peace and security, the acceleration of the implementation of 2030 that denotes the implementation of BRICS and international commitment, convergence for relevant issues. The summit was held in a critical moment for humanity. Emerging markets, developing markets, the BRICS countries have the important mission to undertake actions for justice, contribute to the knowledge based on cooperation to strengthen and stabilize to the world. As the power balance has changed, the challenges have changed, and the reform for governance that has made a common inspiration. Currently, Xi Jinping indicated that anybody that tries to go back will obstaculize, and he need to have the opening and inclusion will help us to keep the barrier that prevents a health globalization effort and the flow free of capital and technologies, and to unleash innovation and knowledge. It is imperative to promote extensive consultation to generate shared benefits, strengthen governance, increase representativity and the voice of rights, following rules as equals. Xi Jinping stated that at this point, overcoming obstacles with cooperation is the only way to resolve this economic crisis with the same goal and strengthen the coordination of macroeconomic obstacles and avoid the problems. The main industrialized countries should apply these responsible measures, avoid negative practices that can impact developing countries. We're talking about equality and justice, securities for all humanity. The requirement for development is that today's world is in peace and without security challenges. In the traditional security field, we see new conflicts. As a result, a lot of changes in prices of food, energy, and supply chains. In security, we have seen successive threats, the propagation of the pandemic, and new variants of coronavirus, and huge gaps between developed and developing countries. Terrorist activities are also increasing, climate change, and cybersecurity incidents. Xi Jinping proposed the Initiative for Global Security. At this conference held in April, the FOAO Forum, Asia 2022. Members share the same destination for a future which is brilliant for everybody. All passengers should make efforts in this ship. So, in the inauguration of this conference, President Xi Jinping used the metaphor of traveling in the same vessel to open a new way with dialogue instead of confrontation, and this to give guidance to avoid conflicts at international level and achieve stability. The focus, which is focused on development, is the key to resolve several problems and achieve happiness. COVID 19 has reverted a lot of the progress. The difficult situation of global economy and the fact of having relegated to a second plan the solution have turned out the need, so the international community is focused on development. Global development. In response to the international community, Xi Jinping proposed the Initiative for Global Development before the United Nations, saying that development should prevail in this global framework of macroeconomic policies, persist in benefits, and pay attention to specific needs of developing countries. The president pointed out a development model of international cooperation and also a global development. The Initiative for Global Development has received positive answer from the international community. More than 100 countries and organizations, including the United Nations, have backed this initiative. 60 countries have added to the group of friends established by China in the United Nations. With this dialogue of high level, President Xi Jinping announced the measures of China to foster global development, the establishment of a global fund and South-South cooperation, increase of contributions for the trustship of the United Nations, and the creation of a development center, a global network for knowledge. The measures adopted by this dialogue are also published with this list made up by these measures that cover 8 years, including poverty, alimentary, with pandemic, and also climate change, and then digital economy in the digital era, and a World Alliance to Reduce Poverty and Development, relaunching an action that improves food production, establishment of an international alliance for research, innovation in vaccines, and promotion of the World Association of Cooperation Clean Energy, establishing a global network for sustainable forest management.
with 10,000 positions of training in developing countries. Under the spirit of openness and cooperation of BRICS, cooperation mechanism has been strengthened. During the last 16 years, the BRICS cooperation mechanisms has been shaped, led by the meeting of ministers of foreign affairs and the meeting of high representatives of national security. It has been fostered the cooperation of a pragmatic and comprehensive multi-level manner in dozens of fields as economics, trade, finance, science, technology, agriculture, culture, among others. Currently, the BRICS countries represent 26% of global surface, 42% of the population, 25% of the total economic volume, and 18% of the trade volume, and 25% of the foreign investment. BRICS have been moved from being an investment concept to an important platform for the cooperation of emerging markets and countries and developing countries and have become an important force in the international arena that cannot be overlooked and in line with the collective assents of other countries. She mentioned the BRICS country, instead of being a close circle or a selective circle, we are a great global family of mutual support and an association of shared gains cooperation. Throughout the last 5 years, the BRICS Plus cooperation, we talk about this extended cooperation, has become in an excellent example of the cooperation South-South and the unity and self-robustness of emerging markets and developing countries. Under the new circumstances, BRICS countries need even more to foster development with open doors and strengthening the cooperations with open arms. We should progress in the expansion process of cooperation mechanism of BRICS so their partners will be incorporated as soon as possible to the great family BRICS. President Xi said that to BRICS Association discussed the development of BRICS Plus cooperation and to reach the position of the bloc in the international scenario to a better development in the midst of the current challenges. Well, thank you very much for your attention. I hope this has been interesting. Unfortunately, my colleague couldn't come, but thank you for listening to this conference. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have the diploma. Our guest is not here, but I would like to ask that on his behalf, Mr. Vicente Ortiz Justice, if he can grant this diploma. On behalf of Mrs. Sylvia Lin, this token, and also Mrs. Gabriela Cedillo. Thank you very much. Ay, uy. Good evening. As always, it's always a pleasure to listen to great personalities delivering international conferences. And as we said before, this information that we need to know, because this is a global firm, we advise clients, and we have the need to be up to date of important information. Therefore, we need to thank Mrs. Sylvia Lin for her valuable participation as a lecturer in the Technical Conferences 2022 on the 23rd annual meeting of the firm, how the new international scenario, the development of Chinese initiatives in this new international scenario, like the route of the Silk, BRICS, RCEP, signed by our chairman Mauricio Movara Gonzalez. Thank you. Thank you very much. As we would like to grant this recognition to Mrs. Gabriela Cedillo for her valuable participation as a lecturer on this conference cycles, how the development of Chinese initiatives in this new international scenario are seen, such as the Silk Route, BRICS, RCEP, all delivered on the 26th of September 2022. And this is on behalf of our chairman, UCCS America, UCCS Global, Mauricio Mubar. So it's cheaper by the dozen. So the firm grants this recognition for her valuable participation in this annual meeting. This plaque of UCCS Global granted to Mrs. Sylvia Lin for her important participation during the annual meeting. Thank you very much and congratulations. Okay, Mr. Vicente. So, a big round of applause. Thank you very much, you all, for continue being with us. So, we will. Would you like a break? A 10-minute break, 5 minutes break. So you will have a cup of coffee. So we won't have the food coma. So 5 minutes break. So we need like a sugar rush or a caffeine rush, and we will be back. So we are back. So please take your seat. So once again, we have Mauricio. The floor is yours. Microphones. Do you have it on? Okay. So now we went around the world, but we want to see the cold metrics that will tell us what we are expecting, where are we heading to. So the last topic of this economic cycle, we call it expectation of the economic restarts in this new geoeconomics. We will, for this, as always, our dear speaker will be introduced by our master of ceremonies, Judith. For me, it's a great honor to share his resume. He has a PhD in International Economics for the University Complutense of Madrid after completing a master's degree in International Trade and Economic uh, Policies for the UNAM. He has a specialty in economic integration in Colegio de Mexico. He's a coordinator of analysis lab in trade economics and business of UNAM. He's a professor researcher of UNAM the International Relationships College, where he coordinates the area of international economics. He's responsible of the academic network of Latin America, Caribbean, and China. He's a coordinator of Seminar of Foreign Trade in the Center of International Relationships at UNAM. He's a coordinator of Seminar of Quantitative Analysis in International Relationship in the Center of International Relationships. He has wrote many articles in economics, among others, and he worked in the Department of Economics applied to of the University Complutense de Madrid. He has a whole collection of books. The most recent ones, we have Praxis of Negocios Internacionales, México UNAM, Marco Jurídico del Comercio Exterior, México UNAM, Regulación Multilateral del Comercio Mundial de Mercancías, México UNAM, América Latina, el Caribe, China, Relaciones Políticas Internacionales, México UNAM, the new digital relationship between Mexico and China, Mexico UNAM. Well, with no further ado, it's an honor for me to give the floor and welcome Professor José Ignacio Martínez Cortés. Thank you very much. Thank you, Judith. Thank you, our dear chairman of the firm, Mauricio. Well, it is a great honor and a great opportunity. I do not say challenges because challenges represent great opportunities. That is why, for me, it's a great opportunity to be in this important session during 1 hour and in the analysis of how more than ever the time European time zone in Asia. So how what is the geoeconomics? But Mauricio Mubarak, who is a dictator, he said you have to work, you have to connect. I don't know how many meetings we've had. Uh, and but Mauricio, who is a business strategist, said 9 or 10 months ago on how well we were supposed how to do this seminar in a hybrid mode. It's good to see you, and also it's good to see the virtual participants. Hopefully, next year, all the family of this global firm And Mauricio, 9 or 10 months ago, was referring to the title of the expectation of the economic restart before the new geoeconomics. That's his phrase. I'm just giving like the brainstorming session, but the one that entitled the lecture was Mauricio's, as a great business strategist, how the geoeconomics and geopolitics will be in. And I would like to call on your attention. You are very familiar with the concept. So how this geoeconomics impacts or is reflected in the EBITDA of the companies that you advise. How it's going to impact decisions of monetary policies of what happened this weekend in Italy, or literal is like to be afraid of, and it's because of the schedule, the 1 or the 2nd of November. This is when the Federal Reserve will meet uh, regarding the monetary policy. In Mexico, the 19th of December, we have the monetary policy of Bank of Mexico, and 100 to 1 in the whole history of monetary policy in the country, there will be an increase of 100 base point base that will lead to an interest rate of 9.25, 9.50. So we will be closing the year. The expectation is that we will go beyond the rate on a 10% threshold. It's because of the inflation. So, how do you feel this? In Mexico, we have an effect that wasn't considered 2 years ago for obvious reasons. We were in pandemic, we were in lockdown, but this is impacting in tuitions, school tuitions. We have talked about manufacturing and services, but the item that will have the most increase in September regarding prices is tuitions, school tuitions, and let alone the US. What do we have in the US about mortgages that you know very well? In September 2021, we had a mortgage rate of 4.55%, and today mortgages as of September are in 6.02. If we uh, continuing with education, the private education loans in the US in September was a 3.2, 3.3%. Now the rate in 4.4%. So what's the impact in the EBITDA? With everything that we saw, our dear admired Professor Eduardo Roldan, and how this has to do with tourism, what we analyze with Ambassador Fernando de Mateo in foreign trade, what Dr. Elias was talking about Italy, but let's not forget what happened yesterday in China, where it was elected 2,227 bureau members of the Communist Party that would hold the Central Committee meeting on the 9th of October and the 16th of October in the 20th Congress of the party, where So I wanted to ask Dr. Connolly, but she had, because of time reasons, I was telling her in the hallway that China, China Reforma, the art in China Reforma, in Article 79 of its constitution, China reformed the Article 79 of the Constitution, the second paragraph of Article 79, to include a third period of presidency. If the things go well, presidency, this is a military term that was coined by the Communist Party, but the presidency shipping has to solve six great red lines. In military terms, red lines is a weakness inside. In this case, the presidency has to solve six red lines. More or less, Dr. Connolly laid out them. If the most important one is security, which is Russia, the U.S. The second one is Taiwan, and four are internal. For example, I don't know if you're in your firms how you saw the drop of the manufacturing orders, international orders. So the international manufacturing orders wa- in China went from 63 to 47%. What does that mean? That they are not selling to China, they are not buying from China. And this is domestically. What does this imply? Unemployment. The next red line is what this drop cost, which is consumption. So the great problem that China has is how it will increase consumption in the GDP, so for not depending or relying on investment and exports. The next line is something with which President Xi started. You remember that Ambassador Roldan, that the first hit is to disappear the Minister of Railroads. That was the most important one in China.
And then they imprisoned the secretary, the minister. So this weekend is going to be convicted to death penalty and changed to life prison. The second army rank of the Liberation Army. This is the weakest part regarding corruption. The next and last red line is there really going to be a third period for Xi Jinping? Another topic that will also impact the EBITDA. What's going to happen in the United States next November the 8th? What are we going to have? The famous intermediate elections in the United States where they vote 25% of the Senate seats and they also renew the representatives chamber. We have the last day of the 20th Congress of the Communist Party on October the 26th, when we would be expecting a third period for President Xi Jinping, and almost 9 days later, elections. Almost 13 days, we have elections in the United States. And next to it, just imagine how this is going to affect what we saw this weekend with the British pound, euro, and Italy. Italy is not, this is not going to be nothing. This is going to be nothing what we are going to have on the first week of November. The solution of the Fed, November the 8th, take into consideration this. May, the popularity of Biden was in 43, June 41, July 39, August 37. In the electoral field of Democrats. That means that according to expectations, Democrats are losing control of the Capitol. And this is towards the big election in 2024. I started by saying conclusions. Those are the conclusions. So, all these series of events, as Mauricio calls them, these milestones in economy. This is a question. How is this going to impact you in a positive or negative way in the EBITDA of companies? Why? Because what we have is the consequence of COVID 19 perspectives of international commerce. I already mentioned the conclusions. So, in this sense, what's the result of the pandemic? And I am putting this as a question. Are we already in the analysis, in the decision making of post pandemic era? Well, we'll see this winter how things turn out. The truth is that, look at this, how the world economy, international trade, in these 10, 12 years, we have not left the turmoil. Remember how you experienced, how you were 14 years ago. Your companies on September 26th, but 14 years ago. What did we have 14 years ago? 2008? September 2008, remember that crisis. Mrs. Anna is expressing that it was 2008 crisis. Remember how your offices, how the firm were facing, as Mrs. Anna says, that crisis of 2008. It seems that it was yesterday. We're not yet recovered of the effects of 2008. Dr. Mateo showed an excellent chart of protectionism from 2009, literal. This Democrat, irony, of Obama, what did he do? Well, he fostered the famous law in the United States to buy from inside. Might seem a protectionist move, and yes, it is. So, how from this law we have these results? And look at the economy regarding 2008, 2009, and what we have nowadays in 2020, 2021. This just to open this way. Now let's turn to this side. Income tax, for example. And this is employment compared to unemployment or consumption tax. If we're taxing value added tax or also to the income. But look how employment drops in those countries that have high income. If you see at worldwide level in trend in a percentage how employment drops, or if we analyze this on the contrary sense, how unemployment is only in these 5 years with the trend for 2023, and I am alluding to unemployment. In Mexico, we had two important indicators that are published during the first days of the month, the current month. One of them is consumer trust rate. And there are also other three indicators: commercial rate, manufacturing rate, and service, entrepreneurial services. I don't know which signal says that the consumer confidence index says that out of 100 points for the consumer to acquire manufacturing goods in the next 12 months is 24.3. What does that mean? That the consumer will not buy. And what the entrepreneur says, taking the mean of the three trade, manufacturing and services. I am not going to invest in equipment and machinery. And by that, it means that they are not going to contract. The expectations of the businessman to contract is precisely here. That's why I make mention of employment, disemployment. That's the national expectation that we have to know what does that mean in terms of business, the crisis, because production stopped. Differently from 2008, as Anna said, the production stopped here. Then, what do we have in this aspect? Exactly this. We will have a drop in consumption. If so, this is going to affect income tax and value added tax. If we add manufacturing orders from China in terms of country, you're going to stop importing. Therefore, I'm going to gather less in taxes for imports. And this added to the breakage of the supply chain. In this sense, then it is where we need to carry out an analysis by economy, country, region. And it is here where we find, and sorry for my comparison, we are under a new concept. As you want to see, the shoring, which is a location absolute advantage, and this is almost 100 years. New one in trend for technology and supply. but it is truly a concept of 100 years ago. So let's keep what we have right now, which is the near shoring. In this aspect, how economies are doing by country, by region, and of course at international level or worldwide level. In this sense, it is where we need to analyze industrial activity and manufacturing activity compared to the famous fourth technological revolution that we saw with Ambassador Roldan. We were discussing about this, and each one would say if this fourth revolution it's a wave of the third one or a new one. But the truth is that we have a new factor that it's heavy in production, which is the 5G. What we are going to do, it's a new device in infrastructure regarding new technologies. What do these countries offer? How they are getting prepared? So the idea is that the conflict between China and United States, this is where it called for attention. It was important to hear about these two new laws, like the chip law, as it is known in the United States, is a technological element and what the European adopted in this sense to contain China. Therefore, then we have two scenarios here. You can see how then is it that this important global firm led by Mauricio Mabarak regarding a firm that has presence in more than 50 countries gathering more than 100 boroughs where you are. So, how the perspective of businesses is in industrialized economies or emerging industrialized economies. How is Taiwan? How is Vietnam, Malaysia? How is the Japanese economy? Let's not talk about the community and how we're going to experience. We're already in autumn. We're going to leave winter 2022-23 in Europe. What manufacturing companies are going to do? Service companies in Europe. Remember that the famous European summer, it's like you have almost 1 month 30, 45 days of holidays because you are working on Saturdays in winter. So, how are you going to be in costs? Energy supply cost. The European Union approved the law of energy reduction in order to reduce 15% energy consumption to save in this next winter, and they are not managing to do it. Dr. Bogna mentioned how the energy map is in Europe. It is here where we have an excellent opportunity in Mexico, as Ambassador Roldan mentioned, in the tourism part of the country. Well, to attract tourists with relationship to what we are going to have in Europe. Eduardo, we were talking about tourism concepts, and I don't know if this should be called like office tourism, taking advantage of new technologies, where it is not necessary to be present at the office. Those of us in Mexico City, we can see the new inhabitant in La Condesa or La Roma. They are office workers in Mexico, United States, and Canada. They located in these zones and they work. So they fostered the rental of housing. In this sense, this is where I want to urge you to take advantage of this crisis by industrialized companies. Who would have thought that the recession, if we take out 2008 recession, the most recent crisis and recessions at international level didn't come from the famous industrialized economies. And I'm talking about the United States. Remember 1994, 97, Korea, 99, 2000, Russia. And who might have thought that 20 years after that, the crisis would be generated in the South? Let's see, and I underline the names Rome, sorry, Washington, and literally, as it is mentioned in the Real British Protocol, literally the Bridge of London is falling down. That's why it is really important in this calendar the meeting of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank held from the 10th to October 15. Out of these 5 days, the most important one is October the 11th. I saw someone, Mauricio, brought the analysis of October 11. What is going on in October 11? Economic perspectives for 2023. If at this point they are not promising, taking into consideration this quarter that we have just passed, imagine fourth trimester of 2022, and let's not talk about the first quarter of 2023. So yes, it is really important to put this in the agenda. October 11th, when economic perspectives are released 2023 and the expectations for 2024. So it is in this place where there is an important factor. I'm not telling you about input output of capital, but taking a look into perspectives, the entry of capital, the exit of capital, and look who are number one and who are number two. Therefore, if number one falls down, how are we doing? For example, Mexico has a figure in terms of investment, and this part that is taxes, which is promotion agreements and reciprocal promotion to investment, where the returning capital will not pay taxes because you already paid them in the country where you had earnings. So it is important to take into consideration what we have here regarding what's happening on November the 8th in the United States to what we have. And I'm going to put it in these three boxes. That's the October the 9th to the 26th of October, having a preamble regarding two elements. And this is regarding to the meeting of the Communist Party. Why? Because these are inputs, right? And these are outputs. Look, the main economies those that are in this turmoil: Germany, United Kingdom, Canada, and China. And look, the input and output countries, who are they? United States and China. So we are intervening in this part of the investment. How is the situation of international trade in the frontal part? Pointing out that we had a very important growth 2002, 2007. Some merchandises and services were increasing. Then we had the collapse 2008, and international trade of goods and services falls down. And almost 10 years after that, production is stopped. Something really important. I don't know how you were seeing this in your companies, but the breakdown of supply chain is since May 2019, with a collapse in 2020. It is opened in June 27, 2001. Remember that day Germany said, we start up the Mercedes-Benz plant and BMW. On the next week, Trump did the same. Consequently, look at Brazil, look at Mexico in this global change of the automotive industry, just to mention two of them: Germany, Mercedes Benz, BMW, VW, Brazil, Mexico, and the United States. And it is started, it collapses. To 2021, about a year ago, we thought that things were going right. We were going to have a big growth. And then we had February 24, just passed. And from there, we go on. We have an increase of energy costs, the fall of merchandise, and here we have a threshold, particularly the part referring to this, because it gives you a perspective, a growth expectation, but also the fall perspective, and that trend to decrease in this context of merchandises. So now let's see this by region, but only in international trade. A few minutes ago, we were seeing regions by behavior of the economy. And what we have in this sense, it's that those countries from the north are the ones who are the least exporting, but the South. A few years ago, I wrote something saying that the growth comes from the South. And let's see: Brazil, Argentina, Mexico. Let's see: South Korea, Vietnam, Malaysia. Not to mention United States, Canada, Germany, or Japan. Okay? And if we analyze this in perspective, then we can see how the perspective for growth for next year it's doing nothing. And I underline this is the growth perspective, which is not very promising. That is, and sorry to put it in this context, growth perspective for EBITDA is not promising due to the situation that we have regarding international trade of merchandise, just to mention that part referring to 2023. Look at this growth in 2021 compared to the growth of 2022. the perspective of 2023. That's why if we see the growth rate, we can see that it has dropped. International trade for merchandises has dropped in almost 6% in this aspect. So, how is that we have this situation? The merchandise movement measured in containers. We see it in containers. When we see this in containers, into big Asian ports, USA and Hong Kong, Korea or China, or well, Manzanillo, Panama, not Mexico. How the movement of containers is at the main ports of these countries. This is something, and excuse me if I do it, this is between production and inventories. Simply, we had a recent experience of lockdown in China and what it causes. According to the experience of 4 months ago, the new lockdown in China and what it causes in Shanghai port. Only in containers. And that's where we can see the finance and the merchandises. And also, in this sense, we can see what it's been said by purchasing managers at international level. How are warehouses, companies, how they are purchasing, and what's the effect, the financial effect? If this is not calling for your attention, now let's take a look at the economic activity regarding volume, intensity, production. It dropped. And we are not talking about 2020. How it is the manufacturing cycle, what they are buying, what they are selling, what they are producing. And if the purchasing manager says, we're not buying, we have another sign. We were talking about the consumer index and also the entrepreneurial, but the most important one, the sales manager says it is dropping. Orders are dropping.
What happens, for example, on the production in China? What happens in those countries called global factory? That is why it's interesting to have this analysis on the near shoring or reshoring, because the offshoring was left behind already. So, what's the great opportunity of companies that you represent, the firms that you have in this regard? The main chain dropped again. As as you want to see it, the the global chain of the car industry. Remember, the car industry has two segments: the assemblies and spare parts. How's the manufacturing of spare parts in that country. From August to July, the exports from Mexico to the US dropped 6.3%. What does this imply? The car production on the assembly part dropped, but also the manufacturing of spare parts dropped. It is not the assembly plant, the spare parts uh, factory per se, perhaps the textile industry, electronic industry, and is who obtains the benefit of this. Remember that the automotive industry has like three or four competitors regarding microchips, semiconductors, electronics, home appliances, and computing. The same chips, the same components used by the automotive industry. I don't recommend you to do it, but if you see the battery of your keyhole, because you press it and the doors open, the battery is the same one that is used for the computer, for example. So what does this imply? That the export of components also drops. So this is when the international manufacturing orders drop. This is where the drop is reflected, and let alone raw materials. And this is more highlighted as of March because of the hub, which is Russia and Ukraine, regarding cereals. So, what's the perspective of the international economy? Where we are at, where we are heading to, and starting from three aspects. One, how advanced economies are. The bet is how much these economies will drop in order to have the growth forecast regarding what we had in London last weekend. We need to wait at least 1 month to have all the measurements. We will have three very important aspects at the same time regarding the schedule. One, that it was not scheduled, but we have the sterling pound effect in London, the yuan effect for the third week of October, and the effect dollar effect for the second week of November, without discounting the meetings of the central banks in October, November. So the expectation is that the Federal Reserve paved the way. So, which central bank, Mexico is at the forefront, will increase 100 point base. If one of the main banks, the Federal Reserve, increased it to 75, the Central European Bank will increase how much it will increase it. So, the bet in Mexico is that it will increase to 100 point base as of October because inflation does not give in. So see how the bet of growth is going. This is what we had in April. This is what we have in July. And the expectation of what we will have on the 11th of October. So, see, just like two countries, the US, uh, the expectation from April to July has a strong drop on minus 1.4. From April to June, we're talking about 3 months. The growth expectation of the US economy in 3 months had plummeted. I don't know what's your view on this regarding China. The growth expectation of Chinese community is minus 1.1. Let's put it this way. The main economy that produces and sells has an expectation which is totally downward. The main economy that consumes and buys has a downward expectation. So, what's the expectation for the next year regarding to what we have in the IMF figures in a pre-electoral year? So the economy is growing 1.0%. What Biden will tell the oxide belt? What will Biden tell, or how he's going to win the Republican state of Texas, or with this expectation of 1% of growth? I highlight without taking into consideration what we will have next uh, weekend or in September, October, on those dates already mentioned. Uh, well, inflation is hitting hard. The increase. What can I tell you in your firms, or how in 100 countries that represented by this firm, global firm? How do you see under the lens of UCCS in these 50 countries, in these hundreds of global firms, inflation? Something that is really important that I must highlight is what happens in public finance on the 30th of September in the US and what will happen as of the 1st of October in the US. What will end on the 30th and what will start as of the 1st of October. This is the fiscal year. The current fiscal year ends and the new fiscal year will start on the 1st of November. In terms of taxes, October, I mean, in terms of taxes, how we will do in this new fiscal year in the US, taking into account that Biden has offered a plan, national plan of infrastructure, a plan of economic bailout. I don't know if you received the bonus, $15,000 to buy an electric car. Remember the picture of Biden riding a car of the General Motors? He looks like a sponsor, and he has a debt forgiveness. And but this money, sooner or later, how is going to be paid? And we have and we have in London, like by taxes, we will see 200, 2023, 2024, 2025, because this money has to be returned to the treasury. So, and this fiscal year in the US, let us imagine how we're going to be in 1 year time in full elections, let alone like Mexico, it's the US, because inflation is growing. How can you tell the young Democrat or Republican voter, please vote for Biden if inflation is up, going up, and what does inflation mean in terms of interest rates. So this is something that it will be a totally lack of respect for you because you are just in this scenario. So this topic is what causing, and we saw the history of the Federal Reserve, the base interest rate of 75 points increase. So in this sense, how we are in terms of reference rates, how this will hit us in terms of loans, credits, mortgages, and financing. What can we tell the clients or the customer? Is it a good time to buy what? Bonds? Invest? Do I invest? How are the company's finances or my personal finances to ask for a mortgage? I'm going to buy a machine with a loan. So, taking into consideration these matters, how do you see in Mexico these countries? How is Brazil, Colombia, well, let alone China, Argentina, Peru, Venezuela, Mexico? For now, if we mention the colleagues from Europe, Asia, Africa, that is why it's very important to have this type of events, and it's really nice that Mauricio organizes them, like to have all of you together to analyze these topics. Well, therefore, another point to be considered is that today, around this time, there was a FX change. The Mexican currency sold a lot. How's the euro's position, the pound position, the yuan position? How's the Russian currency is in FX? Is it exchange rate? Is it the great opportunity to sell, to buy? Well, it depends on your portfolio. You can have seven currencies in your portfolio, and it will benefit. The appreciation or depreciation can affect you, and let alone devaluation. No, we shouldn't even mention it. But how this is the the currency, how it appreciates or depreciates. Who would tell that euro will have the almost the same level as the euro in this 21 years since the euro uh, was launched, was seven times above dollar. Now it is just like pairing up. How's the interest rate in 10 years time? How do we see it, to buy or not to buy bonds? We finance governments or not? China has a serious problem, which is consumption. Consumption does not impact the GDP. Therefore, one of these red lines that she has to solve is this one: how he will boost production, consumption to reactivate all the supply chains starting from China. Otherwise, the economy will drop and will cause a serious problem. You remember the recent real estate crisis in China, all the chaos that was caused of this real estate company in China. So we have there will come another increase in agriculture, in grains, because of winter, and also because the fuels. I don't know how do you see inflation in the US. This is if well the inflation r- was reduced to 8.3. There's a slight reduction in fuels price, but gas increased, food increased, education services increased, the cost of travel increased. So it is ambivalent. The inflation report, when we saw how the price increase in the US, and be careful, we do not, the winter that hasn't come yet, the polar vortex that we have in January and February, and this is where the energy products increased. So I'm just highlighting out. This is just starting, and this is not what because of what happened on the 24th past 24 February. But this will impact. We are sure of that. I repeat again. How is the analysis, the your cash balance in EBITDA? The increase of cereals, the increase of crude oil in terms of prices, okay? The increase of the cereal prices, the increase of energy product, of the crude oil, of gas, and this will cause where this will be reflected in an increase of inflation. So the scenario is not positive at all. We have an increase of commodities. We have increase thus in inflation. Therefore, you have an increase in interest rate. The interest rate is moving. We'll see how the currency basket or the FX is moving, the exchange rate is moving. Where's the call for attention of the monetary policy, considering that this policy has inflation, interest rate, and exchange rate, and along with the political international scenario of each country. So, in this sense, how the risks are in terms of signature or the firm, in terms of firm, I mean, or an entity, how are these political and economical risks that are reflected in EBITDA of the company, of the firm. So this is where we need to analyze the political risk, the economical risk, and it is not strictly between Moscow and Kiev. No. That is why I reiterate, when we were having this discussion, this same discussion with Mauricio to prepare this event, well, we have this situation of, if we have a behavior of the new the economics is moving, and that's a fact. And what is causing like to have a great effect in the EBITDA of the entities. One of the main risks that we have in this international context is what uh, everything related to Ukraine. what is causing the decision of putting to call on the reserve, what we had in London, the new political context that we have in Italy, and something that is really important. We will have soon three international fora, four fora in this bimester. One is by Dr. mentioned by Dr. Colony, the Shanghai Cooperation Congress, and then we have three more in one: the G7 meeting, APEC Gen, and the G20 meeting in November. We have the Bretton Woods from the 10th to the 15th of October. Will this where everything will move. We didn't have this scenario in 2020. The main scenario was the pandemic one, the sanitary one. And in terms of safety, this scenario is behind regarding the security scenario of monetary policy. How this is affecting the inflation will be reduced. Using the words by Johnny Powell, the chairman of the Fed, some months ago, we cannot longer talk about a transient inflation. The inflation scenario will be present until 2025, at least. This is what tend to cause this. Hopefully not, but we need to pay for this. The countries that requested loans based in Article 4 to the IMF will have to pay. And before this scenario, or given this scenario, they will have to pay the loans requested. What's the solution here of the government, or leftist or right government, is what you have in mind: increase of taxes. In that context, we will be in 2024, 2025 regarding this situation. To end, we have a foreign trade expectation fully downward. Please let me talk about the global part, where in 2021 we had a positive growth 9.8. 2022 the forecast 3%, a slight rebound in 2023, even though this won't hit us. But in terms of foreign trade of merchandises, just to mention the two main exporters of capital, the two main importers of capital to the country to buy, to the country that produces, see the forecast or expectation in North America. This is how is the expectation in Asia, the Asian economy. No, for the due to the Chinese economy. In economic terms, this is reflected this way. How the economy of the US is 2.5, 2022, to 2.5, 2022, 1.4, 2023, if it, but the adjustment will be done on the 11th of October. China, 3.3, 4.6, but see the growth of 2021. But be careful, and I will end with this. The first quarter of China this year had a growth of 4.2, but in the second quarter only had an increase of 0.3%. So we need to be prepared for this context in 2023, and I highlight how this expectation in foreign trade, how this perspective of the global economy will affect the EBITDA of your companies. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now we have time for questions. If you have any questions or for Professor Jose Ignacio.
As we say, speak now or never. So it seems that there are no questions, everything was clear. We want to ask accountant Enrique Gomez from Guadalajara. He is with us. We are going to hand out the microphone. Please. Good afternoon. I have a question. I heard in the news that in the United Kingdom they were proposing to reduce income tax to 16%, which I think is quite aggressive. What do you think about this situation? Well, remember Margaret Thatcher is getting back, or would Robin? Imagine we have this situation of the royal house, the new first minister, and presents this plan, and we saw what it cost. So we don't see that here stays very long. So international economy is going to be affected as it has already been affected. Okay, to hand out this diploma on behalf of UC&CS America, we grant this participation diploma to Master Ignacio Cortez for his participation on technical conference cycle in the 23rd yearly Congress of Partners Expectations of World Reset before the New Geoeconomy. Thank you very much for your presentation. An applause, please. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Master. And now we want to ask Ana Fumero, please, to give us a few words to have the closing. She's from Costa Rica. So please, Mauricio, do you want to mention anything? Sorry, we cannot hear what he's saying because the microphone is off. All right. Please come to the front to have the closing words after your talk. Anita is here. Excellent. So, the floor is yours, Anna. Draft is 2 days of work free. No, that's a joke. Yes, I come from the Pura Vida country, all life. So today we have had really premium speakers, triple A, especially the economists. When we heard his speech, I heard all the wiseness and what your parents had when we had the privilege of having a father that was also an accountant. I remember my father a lot when he spoke. And the world economy, no doubt, as we have heard, has changed. And news are not very promising, nor life conditions of thousands of million people, professionals all over the world. This expansion, this experience, the crossroad that we are facing, with no exception, can be translated into opportunities, into economic changes, displacements, technological growth, and many other milestones that change the world every day. And the world should also be modified according to these changes. All variables, from economy to indicators, what we heard, inflation, topics that were presented in a brilliant manner, in a very clear manner. So it is an honor having heard the speakers. They deserve all our attention because no country in no continent can escape the impact of all these economic activities of goods or services. On behalf of everybody and personally, I thank to have these premium speakers, charisma, trajectory, and professional experience. And I finish with this Paulo Freire quote: education does not change the world, but the persons that will change the world. Thank you. Okay, you're going to leave us thinking about that quote. Thank you. Pura vida, así in Costa Rica. So, in the cocktail session, you will draft some Costa Rican coffee. I wanted to greet all the participants that are online. We have a lot of people online. Judith, please let us know who are connected to greet them and also to say hi. And our technical staff, please show the list of participants. And I also have a message for you, Mauricio. We have partners from Spain that were also watching us through different platforms, YouTube, etc. And I want to mention that this yearly meeting has been broadcasted in a simultaneous manner through the different platforms as WebEx, YouTube in English, LinkedIn in English, and IBM also in streaming. Thank you very much to all of them that are with us: Alberto Cabrera Gutierrez, Raúl, Armando Tapia, Arturo Corona, Orfa, and our friend Carlos Castro, our Pana, his nice smile, and Lucio Corona, Héctor Daniel Vireles, Heriberto San Miguel as well. My greetings also, Jorge Hernández Parra, Sergio Penilla also. My greetings. And in this meeting, you also shared the presentation with Orfa, Álvaro Carvajal, Atanasio Ramírez as well, Beatriz Eligia, always present, she never fails, Sergio Cetina, Cesar Alcides, Joaquin Vega, up to Culiacan. We send this greeting. Eliberto, Trapez, Breaks. They are looking at us. Next, page control. Next page to see the rest of attendees. Please move. Or are they? Oh, well, it seems that yes, there were more people connected. So, go ahead, Mauricio. So, as Anita offered to make a draft of coffee packages, so please send a paper with your name. One of the assistants will come to gather. This could have been an award. Who asked me? What was the award for thinking? As Anna said, 2 days of work for free. Okay, we can make a draft of one here at 7. We have our cocktail and the musical part, and then the karaoke. So please write a paper with your name. And we went faster. And sometimes that happens. You don't see this, but in the morning we suffer because we are lacking time in the afternoon because we are have time in excess. But you cannot forecast everything 100%. There are 200 variables for an event, and we wished everything was accurate and precise. But at the end, we need to have a response. So we had like 8 presentations in case of this. And I thought to make like 8 presentations. So I chose one today, and if it is needed, I will have the one of tomorrow. This is the one for the firm history. That's the history of this dream that is opening UC&CS, that at the beginning was United Consulting and Corporate Services. That's where the UC&CS came from. Then, with time, we were requested due to regulations in the accounting profession, like the consulting word was competing with accounting, was not right. Information is known, and we were in contact with IFAC and other organizations. We received material that we were either consultants or auditors. So the way out was to simplify the name and say we are UC&CS. And we included much more things, like our market is not listed companies. Listed companies are those, Grace knows that very well in USA, are those that are in the stock market. But this is not our main market. And I would say, fortunately, that that's the reason. Otherwise, we would be in trials every day, like the big firms were big, but due to your quality, not because of the volume. So, at the end, when there are no audits of listed company, there is no problem to join audit and consulting, though it is suggested. For example, at any of your offices, Anna's office in Costa Rica or Jose in Merida, Culiacan with Alma, Dominican Republic, etc. We suggest to have 2 companies. Some of them have more. Grace has 5, for example, and they request 1% per each sector. That's what they recommend. If a company is for training, another for audit, another for accounting services, another for consulting. If there's a volume that it's worthwhile, obviously. If it is too small, we say you are in two companies, audit and consulting. They shouldn't be together, not with the same people, even a professional group partnering, but not the same people, because then we enter into conflict of interests. And according to the IFAC code of ethics, we shouldn't be in that position. So that's the explanation on why we are UC&CS. So with this history, this is kind of dangerous, this movement. I don't know if this is working. Okay, there it is. I see that all speakers like this side. Let's move this way so we can balance both. We say that there are four stages in life, and now we would be with the fifth one. And we need to start thinking what's the fifth stage. And for that, I would like to have some roundtables with you to know what's the fifth stage of the firm. So, this is the history. There are four stages. The first one, this was born as a consulting firm, as its name suggests, United Consulting. And the purpose back then was not to make network, but consulting projects. Many times they are the result of audits. We find problems in audits, very strong sometimes. So then we have a team, the SWAT team, correcting everything, and that's consulting. And then it starts like that. The second stage was through a partnership, just as the third stage. There were two stages where the firm was backed with a partnership with another network similar to ours. The second stage, it was a British American. They were both in Boston and UK. The third stage was in a partnership with a network that was based in Paris. The fourth stage was when we realized that we had our own goal and it was not compatible with the other two networks. And then we took off as the first network in the Latin American world. This is the first network and up to now the only one at worldwide level. There are some Latin American networks, but not at worldwide level. So this is the first. So let's elaborate on the stages. And now let's move to this side. So we were known as United Consulting and Corporate Services. That was the first idea, let's say. And then we started. I have 8 presentations, remember? The simplified and the detailed. This is the simplified. That's the one that Adrian showed. So, from 1995 to 2000, we made consulting projects like designing and implementing a risk management system for a bank, Nacional Financiera, a very big bank. So that was a risk management system. And then a warehouse and pharmacy system for the biggest institution of social security in Latin America, which is the Mexican Institute of Social Security. We made the warehouse and pharmacy system with NCR, AT&T back then, with the consulting area and some similar projects. Then in 2000, the idea came just by chance, I have to say, it was just by chance I found a person in the street. That's how things work. Someone had the need to be in an international firm, and we had the international firm. So from there, we had the idea to create a network of firms. Vicente says that I shouldn't be saying network. We are a firm. But in the market, we are known as a network. So it came with a firm in San Luis Potosí and Mexico City. And from there, we had the boom. In 1 year, we had 10 firms, out of which one of them was in Peru. They have not arrived. Our associates, one in the United States, in El Paso, and the rest in all Mexico. Some of them in Monterrey, Monclova, Guadalajara, Jalapa, Mexico City, and many other places. So from there, we continued growing with more firms of other countries. There was a moment where it was very important to affiliate a firm in Venezuela. Richard Ponce opened the way for the firm in all the Andean region. And then he paved the way for the United States a little bit more, and at the end, in the South Cone. So back then, we had firms affiliated in all this region in the Americas. It came is the way we are in Latin America, not from Latin America, but all the Americas. We are present in all countries. So we need to cover the Caribbean. In Dominican Republic, we are present, but we still miss some other zones. It is not easy, the Caribbean region. It is not easy to get on board reliable firms from all the islands: BBI, Virgin Island, Bahamas, Bermudas, Jamaica. There are many possibilities, there are many projects. It is not easy to integrate all of them. Somehow, because these firms receive projects from many firms, so we are not interested in being in a single one. They say, I received the four bigs and next and next. So they feel more independent, let's say. But even so, it is very important, the Caribbean, because big economic activity is generated there. Then in 2000, we started with that boom, structuring the network. It was the starting of that network. We didn't have everything that you see today, what you know, methodology, training courses, software, etc. Nothing of that was in place. I have the details here. I think that right now it's kind of mixed because there's one which is highly detailed, 50 pages. We wouldn't have the time for that. So when we started having meetings like this one, we started having meetings like this one with 6 meetings in Mexico for members of Mexico. Then with APA International, it is a firm that disappeared. There's a national one, but the international disappeared. But in this partnership, UC&CS coordinated Latin American with other firms that are not here. It was ACPA offices and firms, but we were in charge of coordination. We looked at us as leaders. There was a meeting in Miami, another one in Montreal, or Montreal, I don't know what he said really. It was the yearly meeting, and there was a space 1 or 2 days for Latin America, and we were in charge of the coordination. In 2005, as a result of the disappearance of ACPA decided it was a very particular firm that experienced a phenomenon. They had big offices, too big, and some other firms were normal, like us, and no chemistry was present, no professional chemistry or economic chemistry. In these firms, fees are paid according to the size. 80% of the firms, the bigger, the higher the fee, much more than the small firm or medium sized firm. So fees were different. An office paid 30,000 and another one 3,000. And the contribution of the big was very different regarding technology. So then ACPA decided to disappear. So two firms spinned off. One of them is Living Edge. I don't know if you have heard about them. This is one of the biggest association. This is not a network. They don't have quality control or anything like that. And yes, they are fees of $20,000 per year, no discount. And the small ones wanted to continue with that, but they were not able. So they integrated with another ones, which was JHI Henry International as well. You know that there are 50 firms in the world, or network or association, and there's a lot of mergers or fusions, a lot of movement. So when this happened, well, we didn't have that partnership. So we are not going to be UC&CS America, ACPA Latin America, just UC&CS America. And at that time, one of the candidates for a merge with ACPA, that was not the winner, it was Jeffrey Henry, it was Eurabi, a French firm, an association, no quality control, just an association. So we made that partnership, and then we coordinated several meetings in this region in Latin America. Of course, we are seeing that. So 5 meetings were coordinated in Mexico, 2 regional meetings. That's another presentation. 2 meetings in Caracas, 1 meeting. Andres left, I think. Well, one of them was in Buenos Aires, almost like the World Cup in 2030. Some days in Buenos Aires, some others in Montevideo, as they want to make the World Cup, just like that. And many firms gathered there. And there was a smaller meeting in Panama. Then in 2010, there was a lot of pressure from the market. The market was hot with all the demands, sorry, the lawsuits against firms. Then they were differentiating as the main topic whether you were an association or network. And what is the difference? A network covers features of Article 290 of the Code of Ethics of IFAC. That's our Bible, as you know. That's accountants and also lawyers. We need to see also the attorney code of ethics. So a network has many features. Let's mention one. First, and this is the most important one, the most important one is that they should have a quality control system in place. This is in another presentation. I will show that in detail. Number two, an audit methodology in common. And everybody should use the same methodology. It, it doesn't read it like that exactly, but in 2022 has to be in a software, cannot be in a manual. It would be obvious to say that. That's another of the features. And the fourth is what we're doing right now is that we need to have a training common system. That is, that everybody should be trained in international regulations. This is a very important topic. And you see that our meetings are not meeting, are training courses, most of them. And we have been for a week studying financial international standards, the ethics code, quality standards. All this is part of the requirements to make a network.
There's another requirement that we didn't fully cover is that share the staff of firms, that your staff will be made available to the other firms. We don't cover this at 100%, but in some way we cover it. For example, this morning, a firm from Mexico City wants to have a work done in Dominican Republic, and they're planning to do the job with Franklin and Oscar. So this task is being planned, even though the stuff is not like fully available, but resources can be shared, which is this is the characteristic to share resources for professional projects. So in some way we are. This is not the philosophy. The philosophy is deeper. So if Alma's firm sells an audit and needs 10 people and she only has four, Eric will put three more, and Francisco's will put two, and Hector Rubio another person. This is how we share the staff, like the ones that were in the big firms, and we had a dashboard, and we just went to that dashboard to see who was available. We haven't come to that point, but I think nobody have. But why in 2010 UC&CS Global was born? Because after 5 years in partnership with a French association that didn't have any of those five things, we had a we reflected not the way we wanted to do it. So you want to be an association, I want to be network. We don't work this way. It won't work. And I remember having this conversation with someone with friends, and they told us that they didn't want to be a network, and we did, because a network distinguishes you because of the quality controls. Like in Peru, for example, they ask us quality control, please review the quality control. We have everything to do this, and this in one association cannot be done. Why? Because it does not exist. It does not exist. And this made UCCS Global to be established because America was too small, so we wanted to grow around the world, and this is how this growth started. How long is it? 25 minutes. Okay. So, in this fourth stage, the expansion started in Asia, Europe, in the north of Africa. All Latin America was already there, but I just wrote down the last firms that joined the firm. Some of you are here. We have Key Accounting with Luis Parra from New York, Eva Zeta Pulido and Associates. We have Johnny here representing the firm. We have Paucar Romero y Asociados from Peru. Those are the last ones. I should have mentioned all of them, but these are just the most recent ones. Fernando Fumero and Asociados, Costa Rica, consultants in Cairo, Egypt. This is where you start hearing or listening other words in other latitudes. Egyptian Pioneers Group in Egypt. We have KHLC PLT in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. It's not mentioned because MS Al Sharani in Saudi Arabian Riyadh. So we are growing a lot in Middle East and North of Africa for a strange reason I do not understand. It is not that I come from that place, but it's flowing naturally. So we have two in Egypt, in Saudi Arabia, SAC International, which is in Lebanon and Turkey. The mediator of Russia and Ukraine, we are present in Gaziantep, which is not Istanbul, it's near Istanbul. And then we have these candidates from in Qatar, another one Oman, other in Sudan, and the other one in Tunisia. So we are in this process. And I received yesterday two requests of membership in Indonesia. The partner that we had there died from COVID. And we need to mention that Brazil, we have had a lot of movement. We have been like people that joined, people that left, and someone came back with another image, and we are again in Brazil. It is very important because of the BRICS that we were referring to this morning. And of course, we worked on strategic partnership because although we are growing, there's regions or countries where we are not present. Probably we want in a short term because the growth we are planning is what we mentioned an organic growth. In the firms, there are two ways of growing. One is by acquisitions for the ones that speak English. Acquisition is not to buy, it is not to acquisition is to absorb them in a nutshell, but they are absorbed under a methodology that there are many complications behind. And the other one is to grow organically. What's the organic growth? What the Americans call the word of mouth. And this is what we have done, not to force growth, but as an example, Johnny recommended us Ricardo and Ricardo joins. This is word of mouth. We do not force it. Okay, we are going to buy this and that, 80 firms in Canada. Yes, someone has the money and does it. But it would not be integrated with the same culture and with the strategy that we have. It will create a conflict of cultures. It's very difficult. We have seen it. The ones that live in Coopers, there was a clash of cultures, a tremendous clash. And what we got from there was not better than what we had before because this was forced. The only thing is like they did is to add numbers. I cannot be smaller than Deloitte. I merged to be like pairing up Deloitte. So we prefer organic growth, and it will flow, it will be integrated to what we already have, and by adopting new practices, obviously, we can improve every day. So that is why we have alliances or partnerships. There are several of them. We are just mentioning two. One is Prime Partners that gave us a lecture last Thursday. It is a partnership for foreign investment. We have investment with Rianda International in Hong Kong to cover Asian countries where we do not have presence, and in on their side to cover Latin American countries where they are not present. And we have also worked with Shai Wing, which is the firm number one in China, and we have been sharing clients. They wanted to have a merge, hostile purchase. They came with a checkbook, but we saw that the cultures would no match, because the culture they have is a big macro firm. In order to join them, they just put it as a requirement, is that here to have a merge in Mexico, nothing that there was nothing like to be an independent firm. So but there's only one firm, but if we have 40 firms, or two in Peru and two in Ecuador and two in Colombia, two in Argentina, what it was going to be a real problem. So the cultures did not match. The partnership is maintained. Normally they ask us for support. Franklin in the island, they ask us for support in Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, the Bahamas, and we send them something to China. There's also a legal partnership with one of the largest legal firms, HL Chung, which is a firm that manages intellectual property, but there are also notaries and lawyers in the whole of Asia. Asia, I mean. Also, we had a partnership with another group, that EQ for White, that manages what they call wealth management. It is the administration of wealth, so to speak. It's the wealth management. And it's been really interesting being with them. And tomorrow, I want to tell you as an announcement, please don't miss this. At 10 o'clock, we will sign another partnership that I think is going to be really useful to all of you. Katzor International is a representative of National Standard. National Standard is the pension fund of the US that has limited resources to finance projects, sustainable projects. They cannot fund a project that does not have a future. A project that do have a project based on actual or real assets. Carlos Ortiz will explain this, and in front of you, we will sign this strategic partnership so you can submit projects of your clients from a minimum valuable $20 million up, but in infrastructure projects mainly. But any project could be from the public sector or private sector. So there's room for everybody in any country. So we are assessing a project of an interoceanic train from Brazil, Paraguay, Chile. It is a Panama Channel, but in the south, just to give you an idea. And they are seeing other projects. So we will always look for alliances in order to be proposed to your clients. In this stage, so you will draw the yellow card when there's 5 minutes left. We talked about 7 meetings in Mexico. What is in blue? I cannot see it. I don't think you can. But we have had several regional meetings. We remember this meeting in Colombia. Roberto was there, by the way, from our firm. Quito, Ecuador, in Chile. The blue, what does that see? Those are the ones that we have. And then this this is the history of UCCS. And what we need to think of is I will urge you to think what should be the fifth stage, the fifth industrial revolution of the firm, and what should include it. Please send me your ideas by email so we can discuss them in a round table, and we will see. We have a pace. We have probably there's better ideas on where to take the firm, because this is the strategy of the firm. The strategy I'm talking about is organic growth. We Let's keep developing methodology, the software, the training, and so on. But probably there are some ideas that we are not identifying. So it'll be good for you to send us your ideas. It's a free access email. So I think that the firm could go this way or that way. What do you think we should do? Mainly to compete, because obviously the rest of the firms do not have are not arms crossed. So we need how we are going to compete against them. Everybody's doing something. What we should do as a firm, as a individual firm, everyone has its own strategy. But as a firm, global firm, what we can do. So I think that I do not have time to deliver another presentation. I don't know whether the cocktail is ready, or we can do the following. What do you think if we give 15 minutes break and then see you at 7 o'clock in the room where we have lunch? When we had lunch from 7 and 7:30, we will toast. At 7:30 the music starts, and if we have time we will have a karaoke, and we will raffle the Anita's coffees. Okay, congratulations you all for being here. Thank you for being in the 23rd annual meeting, and see you in 15 minutes, so you will have time to stretch your legs.